Hi there guys, and welcome back to the channel, where today you're joining me in another Range Rover, and it is another L494. If you're familiar with the channel, you'll know that I've already had an L494 in it, and it's my own one. But I feel like that video was more showing you why I love my particular L494 and not necessarily what an L494 is all about. And I thought, well, this one here, I've just changed the rear brake pads on it, and I thought, well, I need to run them in a little bit, so I thought I'd do a video at the same time and almost do a little bit of a comparison between this one and mine, because mine is the first of the shape of the L494 when it first come out, and I still love it, still have it, still do a humongous amount of miles in it and everything like that. But this one here is a 2016, which means it's had the first of its facelifts, and you do get a few different bits with the facelift. Some are noticeable, others maybe not so much, and others are kind of trivial, but we still have them anyway. Of course, we stopped at the traffic light, but it kind of gives me the opportunity to kind of go through. So it has this upgraded screen, or an uprated screen. It still has all of the same functions and everything, but it's a slightly different menu layout. And I will be honest, I think it is actually slightly quicker. It's still not mega quick, but it is quicker than what it has been in previous generations. You do get a bit more options and things on there as well that you can go through in terms of menus, for example. When you've got your cameras, and you can go into eco data and stealth and all that, it seems a little bit more accessible within this type of screen rather than the one that I've got in mine. And they've also changed a few of the buttons and bits and pieces. For example, these buttons down here that do your dial brightness and your electronic boot both do the exact same thing. They haven't changed the function of them, they just changed the buttons, and it's a little bit more uplifted, minimalist and things like that, and I do like a more minimalist style in cars. I've also noticed as well, I mean, this one doesn't have the amount of miles that I've done in mine, so this one's just coming up to 88,000 miles, and I've noticed that the buttons actually on the multifunctional steering wheel have worn a lot better in this one. Mine, they've started to discolour and fade a little bit, and I kind of expect it because I have done 165,000 miles, I think mine is now. So it is, you know, there is going to be a difference, but these, they don't seem to have any kind of wear on them, and I feel like mine had it relatively early on. It also has things that I do quite like and do notice the difference and use it, because I've been using this one over the last couple of days. The temperature dial, just down here, you can actually press it and change your seat heating. It's a minimal, trivial thing, I know it is, but it is quite nice to have just on a button rather than having to press and click the screen, which, when you say it, sounds ridiculous to think that that is actually a point I'm trying to make, but it is quite nice. It's a big convenience thing there, so that's quite good. The dials themselves are actually slightly different. Again, the buttons, I feel like they are wearing better. They're slightly more crisp with it, and the same with this one here. What I have also noticed is mine's the HSE Dynamic. So it's a Range Rover Sport L494 HSE Dynamic S. It's the 292 brake horsepower in my one, which is the same SDV6 block. This one here is the 306 brake horsepower, but it's not a Dynamic S, and they actually don't have, so you can click on this one here and you can turn the dial in mine to the left, and it will give you a dynamic mode, of which everything sportens itself up. You get these cool red dials, and a couple of things change, but this one doesn't have it. It just has the ordinary driving modes, and then the Land Rovers, obviously they're all-terrain response system. So not that I ever use my dynamic mode, I'm not saying that, you know, it's a must-have to have, but it is something I've noticed that's slightly different. It's also quite similar in terms of specification. Mine doesn't have a panoramic roof, this one doesn't have a panoramic roof. I've sold a fair few of the L494s that do have it. I do quite like a panoramic roof, it does let much more light into it. But this one here, its particular colour scheme being a metallic Loire blue with this nice white ivory leather seating inside, I think it doesn't necessarily need the panoramic roof. I mean, people love it and people have it as their main point of having it, and they wouldn't have a car without it, which is absolutely fine, of course it is. But this one does also have the rear entertainment system, and I don't necessarily see it too often in the L494s, but let's put it this way, there's a huge percentage more that don't have it. And it also still has the original Range Rover headphones, and it is a really cool system to have. You can have two separate things being shown on either TV, one of which can be watching a DVD whilst the other watch a digital TV program, because of course it has almost what you get on Freeview here in the UK. So really cool system to have. It doesn't have the dual view TV, which you can get upgraded to in an L494, which means the passenger doesn't necessarily see TV. but it's a cool thing to have in the back should you have a lot of passengers. Of course, being the HSE, you still get a huge amount of spec as standard, so you still get the heated front seats, you get the heated rear seats, and you still get things like the electric memory settings, which are really quite nice to have, especially if you share a car, because you do obviously have 3 different memory settings on there too. Meridian sound system in this one is brilliant. I wish that mine had that Meridian sound system like this one here does, because it's just a much better experience if you really like your music. I mean, the original ones aren't terrible, as in like the standard speakers, they're not awful or unbearable or anything like that, but the Meridian is just such a fantastic system that if I was to look and choose my own spec and I could only have so much, I think that would be one of the options that I would choose. The reversing camera also seems slightly sharper, and there is also a cooler thing on this facelift one, where with mine, because I am doing a huge amount of miles and I drive a lot of these country roads, and this time of year it does not take a lot at all for your car to be filthy, which of course then also goes onto the rear camera, so when you then go to park up for where you've been, you can't really see much, it's all covered in muck. This one here does have a little washer jet actually on the rear camera. So when you then obviously finish your journey and you come to park up, you can use your washer jet. You don't have to get out and wipe the camera or, you know, do without as such. So that is a really good facelift option to have, and I'm really pleased that they've done that. All the lights and everything on this one, they are exactly the same as to what I've got on mine. It's only when they facelifted it in 2017 that they upgraded those. So I think it comes down to a personal preference of whether you really want these little gimmicky bits. I quite like them, I will be honest. The only thing I would say is I wouldn't necessarily change out of my L494 to come into this one to get the benefits of it. I think if I was to change my L494, I would then go for a post 2017 one, only because you do get that slightly different styling with the lights. You also get slightly different dials in the centre of the dash as well as this upgraded screen. So I feel like you get more bang for your buck if you were to upgrade from your L494, your first earlier one like I've got, to a later one. You wouldn't necessarily go for the first facelift, you'd go for the second facelift. But if you are in the market for an L494 and you haven't had one previously, again, it all comes down to budgets and what you're looking for in terms of specification. There are a couple of bits on this one which I do really quite like. As I say, those buttons being, the dials being heated seat buttons as well is really quite cool. And it is so trivial, my next point, but it's a little bit of a weird thing I have. No one likes to see an amber light on their dash because it indicates that there's something wrong. It's like a warning light, isn't it? But this one here is a more aesthetically pleasing one to have than my one, which is one of the early ones, because when I turn off the stop-start technology, which is the same down here, you just press the button, turn it off, on mine it comes up with a yellow light saying the eco stop and start off or something like that. And I almost think, oh, you know, if someone was to get in, if I'm picking someone up from the train station who comes by a car, they just happen to glance at the dash, they think, oh, he's running a car that maybe has something wrong. And I know that is so trivial because I'm sure no one cares what is on my dash. This one here is a white light. It's a white little icon that comes up saying the A off. It's really obvious to what it is, and it's not indicating that there's any kind of fault. And it's so trivial, I know, but I quite like it. I prefer that it did that than having the yellow light. In terms of the L494, it is so comfortable, and I had the L405 on my channel. Please do check that out as well. But you do get these lovely seats. This one here, as I say, has got the white ivory with the black piping. I'm sure you can see it. And they're nice wide bases with lots of lumbar support. The ride itself is brilliant. That's the other difference. Mine has 22-inch alloy wheels. It's still very, very comfortable. This one here is riding on 20s, and it's even more comfortable. And I definitely do notice the difference between driving these country roads where they're just filled with bits and bumps and potholes and stuff like that. The 20s are very, very comfortable. I'd almost sacrifice it if the 22s didn't look quite so cool, but I do think they do look better on my HSE Dynamic because they're in black and I've got black badges and all of that, like, you know, so I think it has to suit with the car. But this one here with 20s, it does provide a much more comfortable drive. It's a 306 brake horsepower, and you don't necessarily notice the difference between the two, although I would say you do get a better sound insulation with this uplifted or this facelifted model. I'm cruising along, and I think it probably has to do with the tyres as well, because obviously the 22s run a lower profile tyre than the 20s, but it's effortlessly quiet. and really quite comfortable to drive. You could do miles and miles in this car and feel ever so relaxed when you get there, which is the same kind of feeling I had when I first drove the L405 with the 4.4 SDV6. So that 306 brake horsepower engine, it has plenty of power to get you to where you want it to go, paired with this 8-speed ZF transmission, which I have ranted and raved about with the previous videos I've done. I think it's a fantastic gearbox, especially for what we need these Range Rovers to do in terms of their capabilities. They're fantastic to tow with. They tow the full 3.5 ton, and that's why I run one myself, because it looks good, it's very comfortable, and it's fantastic to towing, because I do an awful lot of towing myself. So yeah, I just genuinely think that the L494 is the perfect car for me. They are not cheap to run, and I can fully appreciate that. They're not cheap to buy. Parts are expensive and things like that, and tyres are expensive. Completely get it. They're not the most economical, although they do get better as it goes on. So on this journey that I'm doing today, it's averaging 31.6, which I think you can't necessarily grumble at, considering the level of comfort and the practicality that the car gives me. I think that's really quite good, and I think it's a sacrifice that if you're looking for an L494 and you find one with the right spec and it's been very well maintained, it's got a cracking service history and all that, you still have to bear in mind that they are big cars and things can go wrong. But if you can afford to run one, I think they are the best cars on the road. The L405, as I should say, it is a lovely car. I absolutely enjoy driving it, absolutely, but it is also massive. This is that little bit easier to get down the country lanes that I have, especially when you have people coming the other way. And it is also that bit easier to park in town at smaller spaces and things like that. So, so the L494, I still think it is the car for me as it stands at the moment. The only thing I would realistically change into is an L405, and for the reasons being that it is that bit more comfortable and a bit bigger and a bit more luxurious. But this, I think, is a fantastic car. Just coming to my hill bit now. I mean, it really does move when you want it to, and I don't necessarily have it a dynamic mode in this particular one. It still feels quite sporty, which is what you want. I mean, I'm not going to say, you know, take it to a track or anything like that, but it has plenty of power there to do what we want it to do. So a really enjoyable drive. The spec is very, very cool as well. You know, you can have all your 4x4 information. It'll tell you what your wheels are doing. It'll tell you what your active differentials are doing. It will tell you what your suspension heights are at and everything like that, which is of course part of Land Rover's type of thing. You still get the satellite navigation, and the maps, as I say, on this facelifted one are slightly quicker and better than the one previously. But again, I'm not necessarily driving to new places every single day, so the satellite navigation system works relatively well for what I need it to do. And the layout, I prefer the layout of the screen, but it's not something I'm going to think, yeah, I absolutely need to come out of my L494 to go into this one. It's still a very good layout in the previous ones, and this one is, you know, you do definitely get used to it. The one big thing that does stand out to me is that I think it is wearing better in terms of the buttons on the steering wheel and just the fascias, the bits of trim and everything. They seem to have just upgraded that quality of the product that they've used, and it feels that much more fresh in here than it does in mine. Mine's still very, very good. It's nothing to be thrown away, but I just feel that it does feel brighter. Not enough to make me think, you know what, I'm going to come out of mine and go into this one. But I think as an L494 goes, and as a car, they're brilliant. I think they're absolutely fantastic. And there's a huge amount of hate on the internet, of course there is, saying that, you know, Land Rover are the worst thing on the road. Yet we see so many of them everywhere, especially around here, especially around the countryside and everything like that. You see so many of them, and they are still an aspirational car to have, aren't they? You see, you know, people turning up in movies and Hollywood movies, and you still see the Range Rovers used as like it could be like a really cool looking bad man that's turned up in a Range Rover, or it could be like an elegant posh type car that's being shown. There's a reason that people still aspire to have them, and yes, they're not, you know, cheap to fix when they go wrong, but they, in my opinion, if you can afford to run it and you can do it, I'm very, very fortunate I can run it all through my business, absolutely. But they are fantastic, and I don't think I'd necessarily come out of it for much else, and that's the honest truth. I think as an everyday car, it's brilliant. I get a huge amount of practicality. Low-key, my border collie goes into the boot, and he's got plenty of room back there, and it's a car that I can take all across the moors with my trailer and everything, and not have to worry about it. So yeah, as far as a review goes, it's a very, very biased one, I'm afraid. But I can understand as to every reason as to why, because they are fantastic vehicles. Please do not forget to like and subscribe if you have enjoyed it. Subscribing to the channel really does mean a lot to me, and it helps to see what you guys like, and hopefully I can continue to give you some content. I really enjoy making the videos, so please do not forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and also leave a thumbs up with the video. Any comments or questions, certainly let me know, and I'll do my best to get back to you. And I really hope to see you for the next one. Thank you.